This is our last segment, Patrick, and thank you so much for doing everything you've done to raise the awareness of people in this country about things that I think a lot of people think are too complicated. You have simplified it. You've tied down the evidence. You've tied down the best experts possible. And again, I encourage everybody, check out the docuseries, The Con. And I think it's like, I don't know, like $1 or something per segment. It's a great investment. Please watch it. Please send out word on these segments. Please share these segments so that other people will become aware, because that's the only way we can build a grassroots movement for change, is if everybody knows about it. Now, this is actually, after becoming aware, after having our consciousness raised, after becoming really, really angry at the greed, the corruption, the lack of any sense of morality or care or concern for our fellow citizens, millions of whom lost their homes, lost their pensions, how this could all happen, I'm motivated. And I know Patrick is, I hope you all are too. And we can't ever give up. I know everybody says, but what can we do? Here's what we can do. First of all, you can join the Justice Party Grassroots Network. It doesn't matter, you can keep any other party affiliation or no affiliation, but join with us. And if you can contribute a little to help us keep going, I work every day as executive director for the Justice Party with no pay. We're here officed in my home. We have one paid staff person. That's it. We work on a shoestring. But if we don't get that shoestring, we're not going to be able to continue on. So even if you can just give $5 or $10 a month, commit to that. You can go to our website, justiceparty.us. Here are the solutions. Once we bring people into this grassroots network, here's what we can all demand. First of all, restoration of the protections of the Glass-Steagall Act, which was passed, as we said earlier, during the Depression to protect the American people against further economic devastation. And what did Robert Rubin from Glass-Steagall, who went on for another reward of $216 million at the Citigroup, what did he and President Clinton and Congress set us up with? They repealed Glass-Steagall. Could be one of the greatest crimes of the century. We need, and how could anybody, after the bailout by the government, have any question about the need to restore Glass-Steagall? Why that hasn't been done? Well, I'll tell you why it hasn't been done. It's because of the corrupting influence of money in our political system. The second thing we need to all join together to demand in this grassroots movement is a restoration of strict regulatory controls over instruments like derivatives. Not only unwind the Commodities Futures Modernization Act of 2000, again, a Clinton-era piece of legislation that did away with the regulation that helped lead to this disaster, but we need to put in place thoughtful, meaningful regulations that will prevent against this kind of reckless and fraudulent corruption that did so much damage and that is going to continue to do so much damage to our nation. The third thing we need to do, break up the banks that are considered too big to fail. Patrick, what's going to happen to these institutions if they're warned, okay, we've broken you up, you're no longer too big to fail? Are they going to say, oh, let's go for it, let's engage in this reckless, fraudulent, corrupt activity, and if we go down, our government's going to bail us out? Or are they going to realize, if we do that again, if we do anything that threatens our organization, nobody's going to be around to bail us out anymore?
How could any American who ever brought these words out of their lips, law and order, listen to what we're saying and go, well, you know what, financialization can operate on its own. You have to have cops on the beats. These guys have got away with trillions of dollars of looting that has destroyed all of the principles of this country into what you said about Glass-Steagall ultimately, but it's the accountability, and that's the whole idea of the Justice Department, is it not? And integrity of the law.
Okay, yes, it is. But the concrete measures, we're talking about restoration of Glass-Steagall,
Yes.
restoration of meaningful, effective regulations, and break up those banks that are too large to fail.
Absolutely.
You know, we look back with great pride on like Roosevelt, the trust buster, taking on the big, powerful folks, talking about, you know, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, I'm proud that these people hate me. I'm in their targets because I'm standing here to do the right thing by the American people. What politicians, what Republicans or Democrats do we hear saying that today? How many people do you see calling for the breakup of the banks that are too large to fail? It's got to be done, because next time around, if there is a next time, and
It's happening
their
now.
existence, it is happening now, their existence is threatened, they'll know they're not going to get bailed out anymore. What our government's about is bailing out the people that have been victimized by their criminality, no longer rewarding the criminals. Next, we need financial literacy, education for our students in this country. We can't let people, I mean, we're treating people like the biggest bunch of sheep that just say, oh, geez, I don't understand credit default swaps or derivatives or, you know, AIG's insurance. It's too much for me, and aren't there people in government to protect me? No, there aren't.
That's right.
We're not going to be protected until we take on understanding, because that comes number one. What did we learn through the Occupy movement? One thing we'll remember is the vast disparity between the top 1% and the 99% in this country. The vast economic disparity. Now, nobody's done anything about it, but we're sitting here like we're in the midst of the old Gilded Age, where we have the extremely filthy rich people, and we have the rest. We have two people in this country that have more wealth than the bottom 40% of people, millions and millions and millions of people. So we need good financial, not ideological education. We need good financial education and literacy in this country. And then what we need fundamentally, and this goes to so many of our problems, it goes to the climate crisis, it goes to so many consumer products that continue to harm so many people. It goes to drugs that are way overpriced, that you can buy for a fraction of the price in other countries. It goes to a healthcare system that costs us twice as much per capita, and yet with worse medical outcomes than in the single-payer systems in the entirety of the rest of the industrialized world. We're the only country on this planet in the industrialized world that counts on for-profit insurance. And why do we have all these problems? And why did we have all this financial corruption these people have gotten away with? It is because of the corrupting influence of money. And one of the first things we need is a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Citizens United case, where the Supreme Court, majority of the Supreme Court, allowed unlimited contributions by corporations, as if corporations are people with First Amendment rights. No, corporations are legal entities, the only purpose of which is to maximize profits for their shareholders and, it seems, also their CEOs, because that's how it's all working in this country right now. Corporations are not people. They shouldn't have First Amendment rights, and they sure as hell shouldn't be able to spend unlimited amounts of limited amounts of money to elect people that are going to go into their public positions to serve the interests of those corporations and betray the interests of the people of this country. So those are the solutions, and we coming together can make it happen. And don't think we can't, because look at the history of this country. Where has most social progress come from? It's not from electing the right people to office. It's not getting all excited around election day and then saying, well, I'm going to go back to sleep until the next election. No, it's raising hell. It's getting together, organizing together, mobilizing together, getting on the same page in terms of the information that we have, and then pushing audaciously, tenaciously, letting people, we are not going to let up. This isn't going to be an Occupy movement that as soon as it gets cold, we give it up and we go back to the status quo. It's not going to be business as usual anymore. And I was talking about the history of these kinds of mass movements in this country, the furthering social progress. We wouldn't have seen the movement toward the abolition of slavery if it weren't for people like you and me coming together, organizing, mobilizing, and continuing to push for an end to slavery. Same with the women's suffrage movement, the same with all the great advances of the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ plus movement, all of the kinds of organizing.
The environmental movement?
What we've seen from the environmental movement, we still have a long ways to go, but the early environmental movement, absolutely. It was because people who gave a damn became aware, became educated, and then they mobilized, organized, and pushed until that change was made. We, the people, should make our government responsive to us. Our government should fear us and not the opposite. So let's get together. No more divisiveness over our political party affiliations, because the plan of these people in the financial industry, as well as so many others, fossil fuel companies, it's been a divide and conquer. Let people fight over all these other issues and make it Democrats versus Republicans, make it liberals versus conservatives. The fact is, the majority of people in this country want to see these changes made, and they've been stopped from working together because of this approach toward politics as if it's team sport. And you've got to stay on the same team, and everybody that's not on your team is the other. It's the us and them phenomenon that has wreaked havoc with our country. The only way we're going to solve our nation's problems is for all of us to come together where we can, where we find common values, where we find common goals, and we make our government respond to what we tell them we want and need to see happen. So Patrick, thank you for
Rob.
doing so much to help raise the awareness, which now should lead to action, organizing and mobilizing. And that's the role of the Justice Party through our grassroots network to organize and mobilize to see that our government is changed in the way that the majority of people in this country want. That, at its core, is the kind of democracy. We hear people argue about, is this a republic? Is it a democracy? Actually, it's both. It's supposed to be a representative democracy where we, the people, can be involved and change the course of our nation's history. Let's do it. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Truth is marching. Failure is not an option.